Hello and welcome to The Verdict, a special Tunnels television coverage of the 2019 general elections. Nigerians have eventually gone to the polls in 29 states across the country to choose governors and members of the State House of Assembly for the next 4 years. There are 7 off-season states that didn't participate in the governorship elections. Today's exercise comes just 2 weeks after the presidential and National Assembly elections, but the attendant issues from the presidential polls have largely remained in the governorship election. It appears everyone is talking, but no one seems to be listening. Talk about logistic problems, mix-up of sensitive voting materials, late arrival of INEC staff, non-payment of ad hoc staff allowances, which eventually led to protests and voter apathy, few cases of violence here and there, military alleged involvement in the process. But more importantly, the polls have been largely peaceful. But despite the myriad of challenges, the curtains are effectively drawn over the voting across the country, giving way to collation and eventual announcement of results. Expectedly, it's going to be a very long night, and we will be getting updates from our correspondents spread all over the country while the exercise is on. And we will be here in the studio analyzing matters arising from today's exercise. So many issues to talk about tonight. I am Kayode Alayande, and I'm not here alone in the studio.
That's right, joining Kayode today for the analysis of the governorship and the State House of Assembly elections. I'm Charles Eruka.
And of course, I am Ayotunde Battleground, welcoming you to yet another edition of The Verdict, taking a look at the governorship and state houses of assembly elections. It promises to be an exciting time indeed, like Charles and Kayode have said. So we are raring to go to give you all the latest, all the very best. So please stay with us as we move along.
Absolutely, and we're not here alone to examine the issues, developments, and fallouts from the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. We are being joined here in the studio by a public affairs analyst, and is directly to Ayo's left, Mr. Zaka Bala. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And of course, a very regular guest on this show, on this particular run as well, just like Mr. Bala. I'm talking about legal practitioner, Mr. Liberos Oshama.
My pleasure, Miss.
And from our Abuja studio, we'll be joined by a retired army officer, and that's talking about General Cecil Esakaigbe. Thanks for joining us from Abuja.
Thank you for having me again.
All right, welcome to the show. Gentlemen, it's The Verdict 2019, and of course, this is the midnight run.
So, absolutely, it's been a keenly contested vote, say elections between the 2 major political parties, even though that we know that so many candidates have put their hat in the ring in this election. That's aside from the incumbent party. We're talking about the All Progressives Congress, APC, and the People's Democratic Party, the leading opposition party in Nigeria. If you permit me, let us go to the slide there and see some of the talking points tonight. Let's cast our mind back to the 2015 governorship elections. States with less than 100,000 votes winning margin. This was the governorship election results from 2015. And we can see from the map here, we see the states where the APC is in the incumbent, being marked red here. We're talking about Yobe, we're talking about Plateau State, red there, we're talking about Imo State down in the southeastern region of the country. All the states you see in red here, gentlemen, Mr. Liberos Oshama, Mr. Balazaka, and my co-presenters, you can see those states from 2015 where we have the APC in the incumbent position there. Yobe State missed the bullet by just 20,969 votes. That's APC sitting down there. That means that the PDP has a fighting chance there if the APC party has not been able to firmly maintained their position there. Let's go to Gombe State. Gombe State is also less than 100,000 votes margin. This is the PDP here. They won by 80,237 votes there, the PDP. And so it also means that the APC, if they do their assignments well, they might have a fighting chance there, and they can go back to the helms of affairs there. In Plateau State, the APC holds sway with 44,286 votes, by which they won in 2015. That means the PDP can have a fighting chance there. In the neighboring state, Taraba State, we can see the 93,334 votes is the margin with which the PDP won their closest rival there. Down south in the southeastern region, we're talking about Imo, where the APC holds sway, 96,291 votes, and in Abia State, the PDP is sitting down there nice and dandy with 83,831 votes. But the crux of this slide is that none of this, because the margin, the winning margin, you know, for the winning party there is less than 100,000 votes. It means that they cannot afford to be comfortable, gentlemen.
Yes, I agree to some extent, but you also remember that in 2015, the elections at that time were conducted by the then, you had the PDP in power. And so that's why you also see, you know, the wide margin in Gombe, Taraba, and in Abia. But also, if you look at basically what it's happening now, if you look at the presidential election in Yobe and then Taraba also, you would, it's also very difficult to call, to say that a particular party would be very comfortable, you know, with any of those states. I remember Taraba and Adamawa are very key, part of Old Gogola State. And Adamawa being the home of the presidential candidate of the PDP. You know, I think that was the only state he won, you know, in the northeast, you know, the presidential election. And then Taraba also being a very key state of some PDP, you know, stalwarts like T.Y. Danjuma. And then also you've always had this farmers' headers crisis, also from Taraba down to Plateau. You know, so these are you know, factors that would play a key role in deciding.
But Mr. Libros Oshama, let's that was back in 2015. Let's look at the most recent results. This is the what we saw just 2 weeks ago, the 2019 presidential election. States with less than 100,000 votes difference between the winner between the winning party and the closest contenders. We see that there is no question about the northern part of the country, but it appears that the battleground appears to be in the middle belt region. Let me play that video, let it come back again, and allow me to pause it there. You can see that the middle belt region of the country is where the contention is again. Even though we don't have governorship votes in Ekiti, we won't have in Kogi, neither would we have in Edo and Ondo State, as well as Osun State. But let's see. Look at the margin in Oyo State, for instance. The PDP only won in the presidential election by just 1,461 votes. That's a close margin. Yeah. So none of the major contenders, talking about the PDP and the APC, will be going to bed. They will be monitoring all the angles. They will be monitoring the numbers. And it also means that every vote is going to count. That's even discountenancing the fact that there's a huge voter apathy in today's election. Let's move to Ogun State. 87,107 votes between the APC that won for the president in Ogun State and the PDP. Let's look at So we've talked about Ondo. We can see 34,000 there. In Edo, it was 7,849. In Kogi State, it was 67,686,000. But let's look at the northeastern part of the country, even though it's green for the PDP. But we can see that even the margin between the winning party and the next contender in Adamawa State is 32,188, and in Taraba State we have less than 50,000. It means this middle belt region of the country is a battleground for the People's Democratic Party and the APC. Down south in Bayelsa, there is no votes, there's no governorship election there as well, but we have the PDP led or won for the president by a margin of 79,112 votes. What does it tell you, Mr. Balazaka? What should we be expecting for the two major political parties by Sunday morning?
I think these differentials are really interesting, gentlemen, to me. These differentials we are seeing, because all they are trying to show is that the other party that lost during the presidential election needed to just work a little bit hard, look at areas that they needed to improve, and there could be upsets.
Absolutely.
I mean, from what I'm seeing, I'm likely to see upsets effective tomorrow or before Monday. Because from what we are seeing, I mean, when you don't have a differential that is up to 100,000, believe me, anything is possible. The apple is there for take.
Quickly also, if you look at the southwestern part of the country, really, you have more sophisticated voters in this part of the country, and so for that reason,
you might say sophisticated voters, but I can also tell you that a lot of people watching these voters say they are sophisticated, but they appear to be lazy voters.
Yeah, I agree.
Correct.
I agree, yes, most especially for the governorship election. You find out that the apathy is stemmed from the fact that some people, when they don't have their way with the presidential election, you know, they tend to lose hope, you know, with the governorship election. But forgetting that the governorship election is the election that should matter most to them. And so you find that place like Oyo State, for example, with because of the sophistication, you would also think that, you know, because of the brand of politics that we play here, that once there's a government in power, you know, the tendency for everybody wanting to join that party, you know, would be there. But with the figures that came out from Oyo and then Edo, you know, it also shows that, you know, opposition brand of politics is gradually growing, taking a foothold also in this area. And then Nasarawa State is a state that had never really been won by the APC. And so that's why you saw that, you know, the margin is close, very, very close. And so to that extent, you would also, for the governorship election, I also think that all parties would not go to sleep, because where you have a very slim margin like that, it could still swing either way. Most especially with the awareness that is growing. You know, a lot of people would want to, you know, go back to work, most especially in states where, you know, a particular political party had felt, look, they are comfortable with such state. And then you find out that with the presidential election, that the results were, you know, went the other way.
Okay. All right, so we understand that our correspondent, Kayla Megwa, is monitoring the election process. That's talking about the collation of results in Sokoto State. Kayla, what do you have for us at the moment?
Hi. Okay, so I was listening to a bit of what he said, and the statement that he made there is very true. In a state like Sokoto, for instance, it could go either way. We've been monitoring the election since we got in here a few days ago, and okay, so basically the intrigues here are very interesting. It started off with the fact that, you know, the APC flag bearer here used to be the deputy governor of Mr. Tambuwal, and you know, at some time last year he had to resign in November because he refused to defect to the PDP with Mr. Tambuwal at the time when he left the APC. There's a lot of talk about the fact that Mr. Wamako may have had a hand to do with that, but that particular alliance broke. Now, it's affected the dynamics of politics here. When the presidential elections happened on the 23rd of February, President Buhari did very well here, but just by 100,000 votes thereabouts, which is slim if you know how voting is done in northern Nigeria. But very interesting turn of events. So Mr. Aliyu Ahmad and Mr. Aminu Tambuwal, from the PDP and Mr. Ahmad from the APC. And we're looking at both of them, and you really can't tell who's in the lead. So it's one that we're going to be watching. Like I said earlier, Mr. Tambuwal may have the power of incumbency, but Mr. Aliyu Ahmad basically has the federal might on his side. So let's see how that works out. We'll be watching. The collation hasn't started yet. By tomorrow, we would know exactly who's going to be ruling Sokoto State for the next 4 years.
All right, Kayla Megwa, our correspondent, reporting for us from Sokoto State there. And she just came on the heels of our conversation in the studio, saying that it's going to be a tight race.
Well, of course, now that brings to the question, the issue of the power of incumbency. The governor and his former deputy squaring up in the ring as far as this election is concerned. And at this moment, it's almost a two-horse race. Nobody knows exactly who will take the day because, I mean, it appears to be very tight. So where does the power of incumbency work and where doesn't it work?
I think gradually, as far as I'm concerned, from the look of things or from the trend, the power of incumbency is continuously waning or is continuously declining. That's what I really notice. Maybe at the presidential level, it's difficult, to see that. But I can tell you there will be surprises from tomorrow because there were so many states where people came and either wanted to vote for party A or party B during the presidential election. But the governorship elections and the State House of Assembly elections, it was a completely different thing. Because I saw people who had affinity for a particular person as a presidential candidate because he was in a particular party. But now, trying to vote for somebody completely different in a different political party as a governor or as somebody who should go and legislate in the State House of Assembly. Power of incumbency is continuously going down. And the simple reason has been because a lot of people probably trusted the two together, thinking they were working in tandem or had everything in congruency. And all of a sudden they noticed that, they are completely divided in ideology and in thinking. So all of a sudden what is just happening is you just see a sudden break in faction. You have the faction for the governor, and in this case, the faction for the deputy governor, and you can never tell who is behind who.
Well, Mr. Oshoma, apparently you were shaking your head.
Yes, no, I disagree with that analysis.
But again, before you disagree, I would like to hear the thoughts of the General Secretary because he's been moving, but he appears that we've not been looking his direction. Okay. How do you respond to this conversation?
First and foremost, let me toe the line of Bala that the issue of incumbency is actually winning in modern-day politics because if you look at the struggle of the sequence of election, it's just a matter of saying that when you conduct the presidential election and the president wins, it's a very big factor in gubernatorial elections. And the incumbents who are contesting election do not really have a cast and stone because if elections are to be measured by performance, if the electorate are going to hold the incumbents accountable for their stewardship, then we will be talking of power of incumbency. They have done well, or it is naturally coming. But again, you see the kind of politics that we play. There's always alliances and gang up against one incumbent or the other, maybe because of the fallout of the primaries and things like that. But one noticeable thing that we have seen these days in this coming election is the party discipline that is coming to play. I can see like the ruling party, the chairman has tried to bring in party discipline, which have been resisted in some other quarters that led to supporting the president in the presidential election and supporting another candidate, in the gubernatorial election. So incumbency factor is waning, like Bala said, and the dynamics are also changing. Don't forget that most of these incumbents that you're talking about actually came into this office, by through sponsorship of their godfathers. So when you decide to move to another party and, go a different way from your godfather, the consequence is, you are going to have a shaky foundation in the election. So incumbency may not work in gubernatorial election because the president has a court followership and his influence is going to help, those who are contesting the election in those strong areas.
Well, Mr. Oshoma, you probably are on your own.
No, definitely.
No,
you were going to make. You were going to make
a fighter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You were going to make an.
If you look at the politics in Nigeria, you have the incumbency at the center, and then you have the incumbency at the state level. So depending on the incumbency you're talking about now, and that's why you hear, some governors quarrel that, look, the federal government should not interfere with the heavy militarization of, election in certain states. And so it's like, win at all costs. So this also is an incumbency you cannot close your eyes to. These are factors. Because if you talk about court followership for the presidency, and then also you see the federal might, because the reporter in Sokoto also talked about the federal might. Federal might is also an incumbency, it's a power of incumbency. Because a situation where the government at the center would want to use its power also to see how they can muzzle a state with a smaller incumbency. So you need to weigh this side by side before we begin to say, oh, the powers of incumbency are winning in our politics. What we should be talking about is the transparency in the process. And if the process is transparent enough, then the people will have the opportunity to determine, head or tail. And so then you now begin to talk about the incumbency having to face the people. But as it is, it's still about, special purpose vehicle for politicians to, drive their aspirations. And so when it comes to that, you find out that in some states, when you are a candidate at the state level, a situation where you were a deputy governor, and then you decamp and move to another party, on the promise that, look, they would give you the ticket on this other party. And that's why you have a two-horse race. Because there's one party at the center that has the power of incumbency at the center, and that is a party, an opposition party, but though a party in power at the state level. So at that state level, he would also want to use state apparatus at that level to see how they can ward off powers from the center. And so you have two contending incumbency fighting for supremacy at the state level.
I want to ask the general, how healthy is this? I mean, with this sort of scenario, where we have the presidential elections coming first, before the governorship, and you talk about the use of the federal might of the ruling party at the center wanting to influence what goes on at the state level. Some have said perhaps we can switch things a little bit. Perhaps you have the governorship and state houses of assembly before the presidential. I mean, what will you say to this?
Yes, that's what I said earlier. If you remember the frantic struggle for the sequence of elections, and that one is just the fact that there is normally what they call bandwagon effect, that whoever wins the presidency automatically will have those advantages transferred to the state. But you see, one thing is very clear. The state governors are falling into cover. They're taking cover, they're taking advantage of the popularity of the president. But let me tell you, for a governor that has performed well, incumbency will not work in his state. Because, the enthusiasm, the call to support him by the masses will steadily declare. And that is what is going to happen in this election when the results start coming tomorrow. There are some states that have, trust and they have faith in their governors. No matter where the pressure is coming from, they are still going to come out tops tomorrow because they have done well. And the masses are, very happy with their level of performance. So those states where the governors have been able to perform and win the heart and mind of the people, incumbency from the federal level or federal might will not do much. Those who work, when you talk of federal election, presidential election, looking for maybe 25% and all that. But if you have done well and you have won the trust of your people, incumbency factor from the federal level will not have influence in tomorrow's election. And that is why when Bala said there are going to be surprises, I was really taken aback because I don't know where the surprises are going to come from. Because in politics, you know where you are strong and you know where you are weak. It's only when you have not been able to win the confidence of the people, it's only when you have not done well that you become vulnerable. So when you are vulnerable, you will know it. So when you become vulnerable, the incumbency factor of the federal mind is not going to rescue you from the sinking ship. So tomorrow, those governors that have performed relatively well will be able to hold their forth.
Thank you very much. Quite a nice angle there. But let's twist things a little bit. We saw that our correspondent, Kayla Megwa, who just reported to us from Sokoto State, said it's till tomorrow morning. Even though it didn't sound well to sort of understand that 2 weeks ago we had a presidential election, and so people had to travel, collation officers and returning officers from states had to travel from wherever they were across the country to the Federal Capital Territory. So that logistics, having to travel, sort of delayed things. And so we didn't see results until Wednesday actually. Are we likely to see results delayed this much this time?
No. I mean, I think this one is more localized now. And because it is more localized, I see results coming out faster and probably even better in terms of quality. I say this because if you check some states now, though we won't rely 100% on the social media, but I've seen results of some states before we came on air, or alleged results, alleged results of some states. We are likely to see results coming out faster. And when you even talk about the number we're dealing with now, you know, when you localize it to a state, you are probably talking about a given number of local governments, you know, fewer words. And when you talk about even the number of people you expect to see in the respective House of Assemblies, you know, I mean, they are also few. So this time around, I think the results are likely to come out better. But there is something that is fundamental. Well, we noticed something, especially some of us that had the opportunity of going out to check. Real voter apathy came out or showed up. You know, unfortunately, again, INEC must accept or should be ready to accept some knocks, you know, as far as logistics issues are concerned. Because we saw, I mean, polling units where INEC officials were not there as late as, let me say, as late as probably 10:30, 11:30. There will be a need for true gathering of lessons learned. And we just need to do something about logistics. We also notice also that as far as, you know, infiltration, you know, of, let's say, I don't want to say criminals, but disloyal citizens, you know, the infiltration of disloyal citizens was a little bit somehow reduced, you know, and that is a plus. I don't know whether we will say it's a plus to the electorate or to the security agents or to the INEC itself, but we saw a reduction.
We'll be looking at the issue of voter apathy much later in the program. But I want Barrister to address the issue of how early we might be seeing results from these states.
Yeah, if you remember...
You have 45 seconds. We have a break in 45 seconds.
You know, if you remember, most of the staggered state elections that had been conducted, the latest results are released on Monday mornings. And so, unlike the presidential, where we have to wait till Wednesday morning. And then also, you find that in the presidential election, most of the senatorial results were released as early as Sundays, almost all on Mondays. And so it is also, you know, on that note, because these are elections that were conducted, within those states. And
so, Barrister, you have to hold your thoughts right now so that we can just go on this break. But of course, when we come back, we have more on the verdict. Please stay with us.